the sheets. No. If you stand here, you can see everything and everyone, so that's good. I can see Davina. I say I can see Davina because I know her name. I don't know everyone's name. So I can say Davina, Davina, Davina. Alex, I can see you too. And Ava, I can see her. Okay. Tell me when the sheets get to the back. They're at the back now. See, if you've avoided me all week, this is the one time when you can't avoid me. That's on the way. Gosh, you're going to have to start laughing a little bit. It's not going to work otherwise, okay? Just chesed, you know. Okay, the shiur is really 45 minutes. It finishes at 6:30, stuff at 6:40. But I want to get through stuff. Just give you a week, so we'll start now. We'll dedicate it to Raymond's Day.
Kilos.
We're in Parashat Teize, and I want to start off this year with a general theme, which I think is fundamental. I think it's not just fundamental in learning Torah. I think it's fundamental in our Jewish life, in the way we live our lives. I base the shiur on the pasuk in Mishlei, B'chol drachei ada'eu, to know God in all your ways. And I'm not going straight to the parasha. I'll get to the parasha in the middle. Okay? So, let's start at the beginning. In the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah, Bereshit bara Elokim, Shisha dvarim kidmu lebriat ha'olam. There were 6 things that were created before the world. Yesh mehem shenivru. Some of the things were created. Yesh mehem shalu b'machshava lehibarot, and some God thought to create, whatever that means exactly. HaTorah, the Torah. Kisei hakavod nivru. They were created. The holy throne and the Torah. Torah minayin. How do we know that the Torah was created before the world? Shne'emar Hashem kanani reshit darko. What does that mean? And what is the mashma'ut? Honestly, when you're talking to each other, I can't concentrate. And then when I can't, everyone in the world, because the whole world is listening, I can't concentrate. So. Well, what is the mashma'ut to a midrash that said that God created the Torah before the world? I mean, who cares? Who cares when the Torah was created? We know when the Torah was given. When the pasuk says, the midrash says that the Torah was created before the world. Go to the next Rashi. I'm just accumulating a few questions. When Yaakov is about to meet Esav after many years, he sends him a message, and he says, "Im Lavan garti ve'echad ata." I live by Lavan. That's where I've been until now. On the words garti, this is a Rashi you've seen before, but I'm not sure whether you've asked the question that I'm going to ask on this Rashi. When I was by Lavan, I didn't become an important person. I was just a stranger. So you shouldn't hate me for the brachot, because I never got them. I'm not greater than you. It never happened. To this day, it never happened. But then there's another comment in Rashi. Garti b'gematria taryag. Garti has the same gematria as 613. Kloma im lavan harasha garti v'taryag mitzvot shamarti. I kept 613 mitzvot when I was in Lavan's house. How in heaven's name did Yaakov keep 613 mitzvot? Ladies, to keep 613 mitzvot, you have to be a man, you have to be a woman. You have to be a people, you have to be a kohen, you have to be a Levi, you have to get divorced, you have to get married, you have to do yibum. How can Yaakov testify to the fact that he kept 613 mitzvot? It's simply not possible. for any regular human being to keep 613 mitzvot? That's the second question. The next, some of you might have learned in Gemara in Perek Chet. What's wrong? The spider?
I can't lie.
Okay. We'll make it through. The Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about a Ben Sorel Morel. That's also in this week's parasha, but not really what I'm discussing. You've heard of Ben Sorel Morel, this wild, uncontrolled child? Rabbi Yehuda omer lo הייתה אמו שווה לאביו בכל ומראה וקומה, אינו נעשה בן סורל. In order for a Ben Sorel Morel to happen, the mother and father have to be identical. They have to have the same size, they have to be in the same size, they have to speak in the same tone. My timer, because the pasuk says, "Einena shomea b'kolenu midkol ba'inan shavim." They have to be the same. Mar'eh v'koma nami ba'inan shavim. Everything has to be the same. What is the likelihood of your mother and father being identical in every way? And therefore, the Gemara concludes, "Kaman azla hadatanya ben sore or more lo haya v'lo atid liot." The theme, the idea of ben sore or mera never happened. It's a day that it never happened. It's a mitzvah in the Torah that never happened. I want to piece together these three elements. What does it mean that God created the Torah before the world? What does it mean that Yaakov kept Taryag mitzvot? And what does it mean that we have mitzvot in the Torah that could never happen? So I want to explain something to you in my minimal knowledge of law. I studied law for a bit before I dropped accountancy. I had to do a bit of law. And in England, and I'm pretty sure it's the same in the other countries in the room, something which is called the law of precedent, with a C, precedent. What that means is the law is based on something that's happened. So if two of you have a row and you're going to court to discuss who's guilty and who's innocent, your lawyers will be searching for a previous case in the legal annals of the United States or Canada or America or Switzerland or Germany or South Africa or Australia. Well, not South Africa, and they'll be looking for any precedent, and your lawyers will argue this is like the case of Smith and Jones, this is like the case of Yankee and Mendel, and if they can prove to the judge that the case has happened before, the judge will lean on the previous ruling. That's how a lot of law works, by the rule of precedent. If it's happened before, then we will relate it to the future. What happens if it's never happened before? It's a Yom Gadol in the law courts of the world. It becomes the headline of the next law magazine, because the judge is going to make a new law, because it's never happened before. And so he has to rule a new ruling. And that's a big day. What does that say? It's not a critique, it's just a description. What does that say about law in the world? It says that law is reactionary. It reacts to a reality. If the reality doesn't exist, there is no law. If it's never happened, there will be no law. That's the way of the world. Which means what? It means also that the law that we all live by is not fundamentally educational. It's about government. It's about keeping Seder. And therefore, if something happens, there'll be a law. If it doesn't happen, there won't be. The Torah is the absolute opposite. It doesn't matter whether it's happening. It doesn't matter whether the world exists. The Torah is an ideology. It's a way of life. Before you get to the details of Torah, before you get to the details of the law, we're being told that the Torah is a way of life. Therefore, the Torah is created before the world. It preempts the world. It's an agenda for the world. It doesn't matter whether it happens or not, like Ben Sore or More. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant whether it happens or not, because the Torah is teaching us values. It's teaching us a system. What does Yaakov mean? Single mitzvah, literally. But it means he lived in a way that will later be defined by the laws of Torah. What came first? The derech or the laws? The derech came first. the way of life came first. And in the world that we live in, that's very, very dangerous. What happens when you want to transition from Bereshit to Shemot? When you want to move from giant people to a nation? How do you do that transition, to move from giant people to a nation? Avram is incredibly special. Sarah is incredibly special. You can't expect all of us to be Avram and Sarah. They lived in a certain way. In order for us to follow that way, God gave us a Torah that essentially legislates a derech. It's so important what I'm saying now. That you have a choice when you are keeping a mitzvah to be fulfilling a detail, or you have a choice to be living a way of life. Two very, very different things. If you see mitzvot as a collection of instructions, then it will be dry, it will be meaningless, and depending on your character, you might just give up on it. But if you see the derech of the Torah as a derech, as a way of life, then you'll never lose it. It will be your way of life. Take that theme and follow me further. The Makne Kiddushin, he asked a really interesting question on the words Aseh Torat Hakeva. Now, this is a halacha you may or you may not know, but you could probably suggest what the answer would be. If I am eating food, I'm having a bar of chocolate which is entirely hypothetical and unlikely ever to happen again in my life. A moment of sympathy, please. If I'm, at least wake up for that. Wake up for that. I'm more tired than you. I'm more tired than you. I promise I'm more tired than you. Competition. I would love to sleep in my chair. If I have a bar of chocolate in Yesod Yosef, and I get to the midrashah and I'm already a bit peckish, it's been at least 10 minutes since I had a snack, and I want to have another bar of chocolate, I have to make another bracha. More than that, if I take my talis off in Shiur on the Shabbos for a certain period of time, and I want to put it back on again, I've got to make another bracha. If I take my tefillin off in the middle of Shabbat, I have to make another bracha. It's a theme in halacha called Heisech Hadat. It means I have lost the flow of my action, and therefore the next action is a new action, and I have to make another bracha. There are exceptions to the rule with bread and so on and so forth. I'm not going into the halacha now. The Makne in his Hakdama to Sefer, to the Masechet Kiddushin, asks the following question. When I get up in the morning, this is so good, ladies. You know when something's really good, like your hair stands on it? Look. Yeah. Weird is the word. So, he asks the following question. I get up in the morning, I say Birkat HaTorah. I say Brachot on the Torah. Correct? First thing we do in the morning, I get up, I wash, I go to the toilet, I say Asher Netilat Yadam, Asher Yatz, and then I say Birkat HaTorah. Some poskim say it's Minat Torah, and the only brachot that Minat Torah besides Birkat HaMazon. I make Birkat HaTorah once a day. Now, I go to Shul, and I say certain elements of Torah when I go to Shul, but then I go home and I have some breakfast, or I drive to work, and before I could download Shiurim, I'm not listening to Torah, and I don't learn Torah again until 10 o'clock. Do I make a bracha again? No. No, I make a bracha once that day. So ask the Magna in Kiddushin, why? Why is it when I make a break between my food, I have to make another bracha? Even tefillin, even tzitzit, I have to make another bracha. But when I stop learning Torah and I start again, I don't have to make another bracha. He says something remarkable, which is exactly what we've been talking about. He said, because Torah is not about learning. It's about living. It's about living a life of Torah. So the fact that I've stopped looking at a text right now doesn't mean I've stopped learning. La'asok b'divrei Torah means that I am mit'asek. I am busying myself with Torah. You ever heard the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says that if you're learning, it's a strange Mishnah. It says if you're learning Torah and you stop and you look at a tree and you say, how beautiful is this tree? You should die. That's pretty tough punishment for looking at a tree. I was learning Baba Batra, I was learning a Gemara, I looked up and said, wow, the tree's blossoming, wow. It's all over. What did I do? I just said, it's a nice tree. So I heard from myself a pshat in that Mishnah, and I want to listen. Someone's listening. So I wanted to suggest like this. What the Mishnah is saying is, if when you're learning and you look at a tree and you stop learning, you've missed the whole point. The tree is part of the learning. Life is part of Torah. If you think that learning Torah is just opening up a book, and when you close it, you stop learning, you have missed the point entirely. The Mishnah is saying, when I look up from my Gemara and look at a tree, if I see it's God's tree, if I see it as part of my life, as part of my Jewish life, then that's fine. It's when I see the tree as something separate from the learning of Gemara. Have a look at these comments of Rav Lichtenstein, and you'll see where we go in our parsha. This parsha has 72 mitzvot aseh and lo taseh. 72 mitzvot. It's almost a sixth of the entire Torah is in this week's parsha. So see what the Midrash says about this week's parsha, and you'll see how what I've been saying more or less comes together. The Midrash says, "Ki kareh kan sipo lefanecha b'derech b'choleitzu al haaretz efrochim o beisim." You have to shoo the bird, right? If the mother's sitting on the eggs and I want to take the eggs, I have to shoo the mother away before I take the eggs. I've actually been able to do that. Actually, it was my daughter's bat mitzvah, and that night, and about 2 minutes before dark, we noticed a bird on eggs. So I said to my daughter, wait 2 minutes, and the minute you become bat mitzvah, you can do a mitzvah taseh, which is exactly what she did. She came bat mitzvah as it got dark, and then we shooed the bird away. Easy mitzvah, easy peasy mitzvah. What happens next? Ki tivneh bayit chadash, when you build a new house, va'asita ma'akel legagecha, if you have a roof, a flat roof, you must have a balcony. For safety reasons, but it's a mitzvah taseh, you must have a balcony. Ve'lo tasim tamecha bebeitecha ki yipol hanofel mimeno, so that you won't be responsible if someone falls off. Next, Lo tizra karmecha klaim. Do not mix your plants together, the vine and other plants. Pen dasha melea zera shezera v'tuata kem. Over the page. I always finish on time. It doesn't matter how many sources, so you don't have to look at the sources and say, "Oh my God, there's only this amount of time left to look at the sources. We're spending the night here." Okay, so don't worry. Lo tachrosh b'shov v'chamo yachtav. Do not plow with an ox and an ass together. Another mitzvah. Lo tilbas shatnez. Don't wear shatnez. Shatnez free. Don't wear shatnez. Gedilim ta'aseh lecha, wear tzitzit. So I'm going to skip the Rashi. I'm going to bring the second midrash, because now you'll see the point that Rav Lichtenstein is going to talk about and what I've already been talking about. Listen carefully, ladies. You can bet. Just focus for a bit, and I might let you a bit off your free evening in the Beit Midrash. Midrash Rabbah Atzmo Olez Beshoneh Lechalutin. I've just skipped a paragraph. Ki kareh kan sipo lefanecha. Hadu dichtiv, says the Midrash, Ki liviat chein hein rashecha. And the Midrash is going to work on a theme that mitzvot accompany you everywhere. מהו לוויית חן? אמר רבי פנחס בן חמה, לכל מקום שתלך, המצוות מלווין אותך. Everywhere you go, you will find mitzvot accompanying you. מניין, how do I know? שנאמר, כי תבנה בית חדש. So you build a new house, עשית לך דלת, המצוות מלוות אותך. You make a דלת, you have a mitzvah. וכתבת על מזוזות ביתך. אם לבשת כלים חדשים, if you bought new clothes, המצוות מלוות אותך. The mitzvot accompany you. Why? לא תלבש שטנז, you can't wear shatnez. הלכת לגלח, you went to shave. מצוות מלוות אותך, שאמרנו, תקיפו, פרדנו אתכם, you're not allowed to cut your hair off. אם היה לך שדה, if you went to the field והלכת לחרוש בתוכה, you went to plow the field, המצוות מלוות אותך, the mitzvot go with you, שנאמר, לא תזרק כרמך קלעים. אפילו אם כיסרת אותה, if you cut the harvest, המצוות מלוות אותך שנאמר כי תקצור קצירך בשדך. אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, that God says to you, אפילו לא היית עסוק בדבר אלא מהלך בדרך, even if you're just walking by the way, you just happen to be walking down the street, המצוות מלוות אותך שנאמר כי יקרא כאן ציפור לפניך. Just walking down the street, you see a bird in a nest, you shoo the bird away, and you do a mitzvah taseh. It's exactly what I was talking about. When we grow up, well, let's see what he says first, because I think this is very pertinent to us. And I think it's fundamental for our learning here, really. Some people divide up our lives into two. One part is religion. It's doing mitzvot. Korbanot, tefillah, teshuvah. חלק שני קשור לדברי הראשון. The other stuff has nothing to do with Torah, right? כלכלה, money. It's not to do with money. Eating, it's got nothing to do with Torah. חקלאות, farming. לפי גישה זו, if you live life that way, of kodesh and chol, it's a mistake we make in schools, right? You're learning kodesh, you're learning chol. If I interviewed you, I might well have asked you this question if you weren't shaking in your boots and weren't listening to a word I said, but I asked you what your favorite subject is. Your retort is normally kodesh or chol. To which I say, I don't care. And then someone will say to me, biology. So I say, well, what's that, kodesh or chol? What's biology, kodesh or chol? Totally kodesh. History, kodesh or chol? Totally kodesh. Biology is emunah in the creation. History is hashgacha. Totally. I became from biology. From studying biology, I became religious. Just learning about the human body brought me to a very easy and quick conclusion of God, because I don't believe a human being could ever, or nature could ever create what nature is. So if you divide the two up, your life is very regional. You have non-religion minutes and religion minutes. יש להפריד הפרדה גמורה בין שני החלקים. עבודת השם של אדם אינה קשורה כלל לעיסוקה ביום ימים. So my עבודת השם is in the Beit Midrash, it's in the shul, but it's got nothing to do with the square at 11 o'clock. I can wake up anyone I want to wake up. I can make any noise. I can speak to Frisbee Josh, I can speak to Frisbee Bruce, Frisbee Keith. I can speak to every single Frisbee man I want because I was learning and now I finished learning. So who the hell cares? I'm living two lives. I'm living two lives. That's one option, right? I see the Torah as not the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch's got everything, but I see the Torah as the from things. And when I'm doing things that aren't from, like having peace, I go, no, that's not. There's no Torah here. So what happens? No kesher between the two. מתוך גישה זו שמחה עמדה מרחיקה לכת אף יותר, כיוון שעבודת השם מובהקת ועמוקה אפשרית רק במרחב הקידום הראשון. See, some people then say my Torah is only in shul, it's only in the Beit Midrash. So I don't need to do anything else. There were former people who came across and said, well, if Torah is only in the Beit Midrash and only in shul, I won't do anything else. I won't go to work. I just won't leave the Beit Midrash. I'll stay in Klali. Because Torah is only in the Beit Midrash. Not in the Israeli army, Khalila, not in the streets, in the Bursa. No, it's only with from things. I understand, ladies, this is almost heresy. It goes against everything we said until now. The Torah is all encompassing. La'asot b'divrei Torah is everything and everywhere. It's a way of life. It has to go with me wherever I want to go. Turn over the page. There is a rabbi in Krakow. I don't know whether you met him when you went to Krakow. He's on the wall in the Ramah Shul at the back. His name was Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer. Rabbi Yosef Nechemia Kornitzer was the Ab Beit Din of Krakow. He died in 1933. His son, Rav Shmuel Kornitzer, took over. When the Germans arrived in Krakow, Rav Shmuel Kornitzer went to speak to the Germans. They took him to Auschwitz and killed him. Auschwitz wasn't really working as Auschwitz, so they took him to Auschwitz and killed him. They burnt his body and made the community pay for the ashes. In Auschwitz 1, for many years, that document that they sent to the community in Krakow used to be on show there. Rav Shmuel is buried in a different cemetery about 100 meters away from the Ramah cemetery. Rav Yosef Nechemia Kohen says the following thing: ladies, this is so good. I mean, you actually won't be able to do anything tonight after you've heard this. Hold on to it's just so good. So good. Says Rav Yosef Nechemia Kohen, V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam. You should teach it to your children. How do you teach your children? V'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech. By the way you behave, not by the books that you open. So good. So good. Not by the books that you open, not by the minyanim you go to, v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'v'lechtecha b'derech. That's how you teach your children. Girls have asked me, they go to camp in the summer, how do I teach my students to daven? I say to them, you daven. You can't teach people to daven, but if you are a role model and they see you davening, they'll daven. If you're a role model and you tell them to daven and you go and talk to your friend, they'll never daven again. They'll see you as a hypocrite. Our Judaism is a way of life, ladies. And if it's not a way of life, go to my next source. This is another lesson that I learned from myself. Take you to another area in Bereshit. This is good stuff, okay? So you come back, okay? This is good stuff. I want to take you to another story in Bereshit. Rivka can't have children. You should never know what it is for a woman not to be able to have children. It's the most painful thing. Once a month, disappointment. She's surrounded by women who are having children, families. It's the most terrible thing. And all of you might not have this. Rivka gets pregnant. There's no ultrasounds, right? There's no hospital to visit. She gets pregnant. She knows she's pregnant. And she's got a bit of rumbling in her womb. And she says, if this is the way, then I want to die. And you're asking yourself the question, what is wrong with you, lady? You're pregnant, it hurts a little bit. You waited 20 years you waited for this. If this is what it's like, Rashi says, it can't be pshat. There's no way she's complaining because she's pregnant. She's complaining about something else. And what he's about to say you've heard 100 times, but what I'm about to say I don't think you've ever heard before. She goes and Hidroshet Hashem. She doesn't go to the doctor. She goes to God. What does God say to her? What was her problem, says Rashi? We know the Midrash, that when she went outside of a Talmud Torah, the baby wanted to come out. And then she went outside of Beit Avodah Zarah, and the baby wanted to come out. Whatever a Talmud Torah is, whatever it is, positive, negative. And she is in a terrible way. And how do I know that this was her problem? Because the minute God tells her what's going on, she calms down. What does God tell her? She has twins. And then she calms down. It's okay, you have twins. Now understand, you've heard this before, right? Now understand this, Rashi. When Rivka thought she had one child, and that child wanted to do Avodah Zarah, wanted to do Talmud Torah, she wanted to die. When God says you have two children, one's going to be an idolater, one's going to be a believer, she can live with it. It's pshat in the Midrash. There's no other way to learn the Midrash. There's no other way to learn the Midrash. There's no other way to learn, because she calms down. God says, Shnei goyim v'nech, you have twins. And she calms down. She doesn't get hysterical anymore. She's okay with it. Meaning, now, go to the conclusion. If you're a hypocrite, she would rather die than have you as a child. There is nothing worse than being a hypocrite. There is nothing worse in life than being a hypocrite. Doing one thing and doing another thing and blowing with the wind. And when you're with these people, you do one thing. When you're with these people, you do something else. There is nothing more, I've seen nothing more negative than not having any direction in life, to the degree that she would rather have an idolatrous son and a believing son. She can live with that. At least he's consistent. I don't want a son who does both. I don't want a son who keeps halacha in shul and then goes and does other things outside. I don't want it. I'd rather die than bring a child like that into the world. That's pretty strong, no? I don't think you can learn the Midrash any other way. Honestly, if you have a suggestion, I'm happy to hear. I don't think you can. She calms down when she's told she has twins. She was bothered, according to the Midrash, by the fact that she had contractions or movements when she went to different places. And then God says, you've got twins, so she's not bothered anymore by it. She's okay. That ain't something a Rasha, but yeah, what that's a different question. That ain't something a Rasha, Yaakov be a Tam, and that's fine. I don't want a Tam and a Rasha in one person. Look inwards, ladies. As a human being, you don't want to be a hypocrite. You don't want to be someone who, when you're out on a Monday night, you do one thing, when you're in a baby dress, you do another thing. You don't exist. You don't exist. I want to show you something even better. Look at the Pasuk in Shemot. Skip a source to the Pasuk in Shemot. Moshe Rabbeinu, so says Steven Spielberg, but so says the Midrash. Moshe Rabbeinu was brought up in a palace. He was an Egyptian prince. That's what the Midrash says. I don't know how accurate his film was because I never saw it. But Moshe was an Egyptian prince for many years, maybe 20 years. We don't know how old he was when he killed the Egyptian. We know he was 80 when he came back. But it happened when he was younger. And according to the Midrash, he was actually a chief of staff in the Egyptian army and fought the Ethiopian army. He was a hero in Egypt. As the Midrash says that. Torah Shabbat Peh. So Moshe is, on the one hand, is a prince of Egypt. He eats Egyptian falafel. He wears Egyptian clothes. He speaks Egyptian. He's an Egyptian. On the other, that Yocheved has been educating him quietly on the side. So he knows he's a Jew as well. And look at this pasuk, ladies. This is my Rebbe, Rabbi Bernstein, his Yortzeit this week, 30 years. My son, my eldest son, is named after him. Moshe grew up, and he went out to see his brothers. He knew the Jews, he was connected to the Jews. And he saw their suffering. And he saw an Egyptian man smiting a Jewish man. He looks here and there. He sees no one's there, and he kills the Egyptian. So the pshat is, right, that he went out there, he saw something wrong, he saw that he was clear, and then he killed the Egyptian. My Rebbe said like this. Moshe went out, and then he looked at himself, and he saw an Ish Mitzri, he saw an Ish Yehudi. He looked inside. She said, I know that I can't be an Egyptian and a Jew. So he killed the Egyptian. It's fantastic. He looks inside. Am I an American or am I a Jew? Am I Canadian? You've had to ask this question, maybe something for the first time ever in the last year. In England, we always ask the question because the English government never liked Israel and the BBC never liked Israel. It should be the BPC, the British Palestinian Corporation. So we were always up against the English. But in America, America has normally been friends of Israel. And suddenly, they're standing outside Columbia University and you have the presidents of these schools talking such nonsense and ignorance. So what are you? You suddenly have to ask yourself the question, are you American? Are you Jewish? What are you? Very often they tell you who you are. If you don't want to make the decision yourself, they'll tell you who you are. And that's incredible. That goes together with what we said on the Rashi. You can't live two lives. You can, but you're efforts, you're nothing. You have to aspire to what there has to be consistency. Why go back? Because there's a derech. It's a way of life. It's not just a collection of instructions that when I feel like I do this and when I don't feel like I do this, it's a way of life. Therefore, we have to choose. And we sometimes feel we can get the best of both worlds, but you can't really, because what happens is every time you go forwards and then you go to the other world, you just go back again. And then you go backwards and forwards and you just get dizzy. And you learn, you feel good, you feel connected, and then you go and watch some Nourish Club on YouTube and you go all the way down again. And then you go and learn, you go up and down. Then you listen to Justin and Haley singing, and then you go down again. And then, you told me another name, right? Oh, what's her name you told me?
Taylor.
Taylor. And then you go down again, and then you go back to Rabbeinu, you go up again. Here's Rabbeinu, confused and dizzy. And then you go out and you don't make a break, you don't do that down again. So what's going on in your life? You're going backwards and forwards and backwards, and you're going nowhere. You're going nowhere. Because there's no consistency, because there's no derech. That's what we're aiming for. It doesn't mean that overnight we can stop everything that we're doing. It means first and foremost to be aware of what's going on in our religiosity. To be aware that that's what's going on in our lives. That we're going backwards and forwards, that there's a lack of consistency, that we're Esav and Yaakov together. That we can't be Esav and Yaakov together. We have to decide who we want to be. Either way, we have to decide who we want to be. We have to be truthful to ourselves and consistent with who we are. I don't want you to look at this as a shit. Just true advice. Just true direction to life. But the way that we should live is to try and work out that what I'm doing every day follows a certain pattern. And I'm not just lying to myself in everything that I do, because it's a derech. And that's how Yaakov can keep Tariag Mitzvot. And that's why the parasha covers every different part of the day, and there's a mitzvah to every bit of part of the day. So I'm surrounded by mitzvot. I'm not surrounded by direction. My life is mitzvah. My life is a derech. Have a look at the Alshir. It doesn't say much. I mean, that you're more interested in the group of little 5-year-olds screaming, but nevertheless, maybe I'll stand outside and scream the shit too. That's what I titled the shit. I'm almost done, honestly, I'm almost done. In all your ways know him. What does that mean? כי אפילו בדרכך מתייחסים אליך כאוכל ושותה. Even when you're eating and you're drinking. ושינה, even when you're sleeping. וכיוצא, כי תאכל לסוב על נפשך לחיימך בגופך ולא למלא בטנך. What you're trying to do is keep yourself alive to serve God. Ladies, you said it every year, all of your life. But sometimes you don't realize what you're saying. We'll get there in a few weeks' time. You'll say, Kotvenu l'chayim. Write this in the book of life. Melech hafetz b'chayim. Why? Lema'ancha Elohim chayim. To serve Him. We're not asking God to live for another year so that we can get in another movie, so we can get an upgrade in our phone. Lema'ancha. He said every year. All of us said. Lema'ancha Elohim chayim. Kotvenu l'chayim. Write this in the book of life so that we can serve Him. That's why we're here. We're here to serve God. Every scenario we face is a challenge to our Avodat Hashem. And I would like it to be our ethos, your ethos. When you're learning, that you understand that it's not about getting through the text. It's not even about enjoying the shir. It's about a way of life. If I could underline one thing that I feel is fundamentally different to living in Israel, and my life in Israel is just a way of life. Last night I went to teach my daughter's grade. She's in grade 12 in Arad. I had to drive through the area of Hebron. And I'm thinking, mamish dark roads or whatever. And I'm just thinking that, wow, when I was 16, did I think that I would just be driving to teach my daughter through Hebron? Hebron is Ir HaAvot. It's not Teaneck, it's not Edgware, it's not Johannesburg, it's Ir HaAvot. Everywhere I go, last week I went away with my wife, I went to Tzfat, I went to Meron. Everywhere I go, it's just, I'm living inside Torah. The Vilna Gaon said there are 3 mitzvot that have one thing in common. Sukkah, Mikvah, and Eretz Yisrael. What do they have in common? They're the only mitzvot that you go inside of. but you're living inside of. You go inside the sukkah, you immerse yourself in the mikveh, and you're living in Israel. My dream is to build a mikveh in my sukkah, and then I'll have 3 levels of protection. I'll be in Israel, in my mikveh, I'll just be there with a snorkel, I'll stay there forever, I'll be in my mikveh, in my sukkah in Israel. But what's the difference? When you pick up a lulav, you shake it, right? The lulav's on the outside. The lulav's on the outside. When I go into a sukkah, I'm inside the mitzvah. And I have to tell you, it's what I believe. You don't have to believe it. It's what I believe. My life in this country is wholly Jewish. Everything I do, everywhere I go, is Jewish. It doesn't even matter for the moment that it's not a religious country. The capital of Jordan is Amman. Ammon from the Tanakh is Ammon from the Tanakh. Everywhere you go in this country is Tanakh. Even the Arabs tell us we got Har HaBayit isn't ours, so why is it called Har HaBayit then? The little house that Jack built, or it was Beit HaMikdash? BBC said the Jews are making claims to Temple Mount. Why is it called Temple Mount, Mr. BBC? Because there was a temple on it, and who did the temple belong to? Me. Me. And again, it's just part of living it. I want to give you a bracha for this year, for the rest of this year, for Shana Bet. Because this is so fundamental. That you learn that what we are, who we are, is a way of life. It's a way of life. If you can appreciate that it's a way of life, you will love it. If you look at it as a collection of instructions, it will just be a burden, a list that you have to check off. If you see it as a way of life, it will fill you. And this year as well, you have a chance to do that, right? You don't have any other disturbances, just to live it. Every single thing. You'll see here, you'll see slichot here, you'll see people coming in, and if you look carefully, you'll see slichot in the month of Elul in Sfardim, you'll see they're not coming in with tum. They've got earrings, they've got no hair, they've got trousers on. They're not religious people, they're people who are loyal to our people. Sfardim are very much like that. Even if they're not religious, they love the religion, they have kavod Torah, and just breathe in the way of life. Because that's something that if a person leaves and goes back home, it's something that's very hard. You have to go to NYU every day because you've got to take your Judaism in there with you. You have to do that. It's much harder. But it can be done. It can be done anyway. It should be like engraved on your forehead, not a collection of instructions, but a way of life. Have a good evening. Collect up your papers, ladies, bring your shiur down here.